Welcome to the After Chat. I'm Michael.
I'm Daleen.
I'm Ellis.
And today we are going to be talking about parenting. Y'all excited?
Yeah.
Yes.
Y'all ready?
Ready.
Let's
Ready.
do it.
Welcome to the After Chat. Real questions. Real talk. Real life.
All right, so what is your favorite thing to get that you hate buying for yourself? I know, it sounds weird, right?
This is a good question. My favorite thing to get that I hate buying for myself. So, like, I like getting it as a gift, but I don't want to go out and buy it for myself.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
that's
don't want
the
to
question.
spend
Okay.
the money on it, but
All
you
right.
love receiving it.
Probably, like, functional clothes. Like, you know, like workout clothes or, like, yard clothes, like that stuff. Because, like, you know, clothes I'm going to wear, like, to work or whatever, I care about picking those myself. But that stuff I just mentioned, I really don't care. And I don't want to go buy it and spend the money. So, yeah, I think, functional clothes. Whatever falls under that column for you. That's my answer.
Okay. So like a weird graphic tee that has like some sort of ironic slogan on it. Like that would be what you would want to get. Like, because that would be like an outdoor work shirt for me.
I would, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you could get me any of those, and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'll wear it to the gym. It's not going to bother me.
Okay. I'll remember that come Christmas.
You're gonna get the weirdest.
Yeah, you are. Yes, you are.
Everybody in the gym is going to be like,
Like Ellis just is gonna roll in.
I feel
with
like you just put a challenge out there for Abby.
like Ellis is just
Abby's
gonna
kind of like,
like it's gonna be like a shirt with outer space and like 3 kittens like on it.
actually, I think Colin had one of those shirts with the galaxy and the cats on it.
if it's from Abby, it'll be a hot pink shirt with some Disney character on it. 100%. 100%. I'm going to wear it anyway. I'm not afraid.
Breakaway pants.
Yeah,
That-
breakaway pants.
That would
there you
be
go.
like that's a
Yes.
functional pair of clothing.
There you go.
There
Perfect.
we go. That's what Ellis is hoping. Like he's waiting for that to come back in style. Although I don't really know if it ever like was technically like in style.
They're so practical, though.
They are.
Yeah, anyways.
Like you just pop.
They
them
have,
off.
like, snaps. They have snaps down the side. So it's like 2 pieces.
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
that. I was like, my brain was working overtime.
And then you get the effect of, like, it's all dramatic. It's awesome. Daleen's like, why am I here?
All right, mine is socks. Like
Oh, good. There you go. That's a good answer.
let's just plow ahead. All right, so like I don't like going out and buying socks, but like if somebody gets me socks, like I very much like that. Like I find it very satisfying, like to like you know how they come like attached by that little piece of plastic.
Yes.
I find that very satisfying to like cut and then like separate them. It's weird, I know, but this is where we're going.
So, funny story about that. Abby brought me home a bag of socks last night or the night before. And first of all, that was awesome because socks is a good answer to this
Yes.
question. Secondly, I just opened the bag and just pulled the socks out and they were loose. You know, I had the scissors. I was ready to cut the thing.
Yeah.
Didn't have it. I didn't have to cut anything off. Opened the bag, took the pair of socks out, put them on.
There you go.
It was amazing.
Oh, I was just going to ask if that made you sad.
No, that was fantastic. Usually it takes me 10 minutes to get
No,
It
like,
is.
I've
It is.
got-
Sometimes I'm like, okay, how many more and where am I
Yes.
missing
I got
them?
a little
Because
pair of
then you
scissors
don't
that
want...
are like perfect for the task, and I find it very satisfying. So yes, socks. Hated getting them as a kid, love them as an adult.
There you go.
It's just weird like that.
Okay. So, European chocolate.
European chocolate.
Like Toblerone and
yes.
Ferrero Rocher.
Ooh.
I love getting those, especially Christmas time or my birthday. And I like eating them, but I don't necessarily buy them for myself.
They're a little
Yes.
pricey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Those little luxuries like that. Yes.
Yes.
Very much like that.
Very-
All right, if you could instantly master a new hobby or skill, what would it be?
I would say, like growing cut flowers, like gardening, like bigger scale than just puttering in my garden. That's something I would. It intimidates me. I've been listening to some podcasts about it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just snap my fingers and grow some cut flowers. And
What kind of flowers specifically?
oh well, they all have very weird names. So like snapdragons and well, sunflowers I guess are like easier, but there's those nice bouquets you would buy at a store and
Yes.
pay an absorbent amount for. Those ones, if I could just like grow those. Yeah.
Sweet.
Definitely like carpentry, like woodworking, electrical, plumbing, like anything in those veins, like any like trade like that. Like that would be helpful around the house. I wish I could just like matrix style. I need to learn how to become a master plumber and and then there I am. Like I'm a master plumber now. Like I think that like that's what I want to do. Like something like that.
Yeah.
Although I think woodworking would probably be like general carpentry would probably be the one that I would want the most.
That's a great answer. But for the sake of variety, I'll go with another one. I would say probably to play an instrument or maybe even sing. Yeah, that's a skill, right? You can develop that. Because
Can you?
I mean, you can improve.
Anybody can say.
Yeah, like you can
Okay.
improve on your natural level of ability. You might never reach like beyond, but like I do enjoy singing. I just don't like the effect it has on anyone around me who can hear it. So
Yes.
so I would be able
No,
to
not
transform
that.
that.
I feel like that's where I would fall.
That came out all wrong. Like I get what you're saying. Not that your singing has a bad effect.
Uh-oh.
My bad.
Uh-oh. We got Michael going. The laughs are in here.
Like that's not what I
man.
meant. That's
No.
not what I meant. Because I sit very strategically in the big room whenever
Yes.
we're at church on
Yes.
Sundays. I sit directly in front of a speaker, and that way I can sing and nobody around me has to hear it.
There you go.
Because
Yes.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So that would be it. Yes. Cool.
Okay.
There
All
we
right.
go.
All right. I got the next one. What's your favorite family memory?
Ooh, camping.
Camping.
Like
Okay.
that was a ton of fun. Like we had this camper. We belonged to this one campground resort in Southern Illinois, and we would go there during the summers for like a week at a time. That was always such a blast. Like those were some of my favorite memories. Like as like the nuclear family, like going out and doing something. Like we'd go catfishing. There was like a little arcade there, and if you were like they're camping, like you could go in there and like play the games for free. They'd give you tokens, like an X amount, like per day. It was like just an awesome experience for all six of us. Super fun.
Okay. For mine, it is like, so I grew up on a farm, and which always meant we didn't take vacations because, somebody had to make sure nothing happened to the farm. So 1 week a year, we would go on vacation to the beach, which is like a 12-hour trip to drive there. But we would go as the whole family and just, I think it's part of being at the beach and just, not being distracted by work that needs to get done. So it was just lots of time spent together. And so I have fond memories of that.
Awesome.
How many were in your family? Like that would load up. Like 'cause we had a van. Like 'cause there was 4 kids and 2 adults. So like this was a big trip. Like you're crammed in all together driving.
Well, my siblings were so much older than me. So by the time that we started doing this, when I was in my like early teens, they were all in college. So then it meant, I would go with my parents, and then they would either come together, or if they were dating somebody, that person would. So it was like this whole caravan of cars. I just always remember, and then you're stopping halfway and all that stuff. So it was probably like 2 or 3 cars of people just going down. So
Fun.
yeah.
Cool. We went to Universal Studios in Orlando the summer after I graduated high school, and it was awesome. It has like everything a family trip could have. Like it had the family bonding moments, it had the jokey like hijink moments, it had the times where like we went and did our own thing and then came back together and got to talk about it. Like it was really cool. There was one there's one that we still joke about like to this day. They have a roller coaster from the Mummy franchise. but it's inside a building, so you can't see it from the outside. You can't really figure out what it is until you go inside. So me and my dad and my brother went and rode it because my mom doesn't like roller coasters, and we were like, yo. And at the beginning, it kind of tricks you because you kind of crawl through and you kind of see stuff around you slowly, and then it transforms into like this full-scale roller coaster. So we're like, yo, we're going to get mom on this roller coaster, and we're not going to tell her what it is. So she got on the ride. No. Yeah, she got on the ride, and it's like all slow, and she's like, oh, this is fine. And then it goes around this corner, and you just start, and she was like, y'all, this is not it. And she was mad, but it was funny. We can look back on it in hindsight, and it's pretty funny now. So.
Oh, I have sympathy for your mother.
She's all right.
I don't like roller. I'm the one that stands with the bags because I don't do roller coasters.
No. So, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from your family? This is kind of a big one. Most valuable lesson.
This is a tough one. I think for me, it's probably the importance of structure. My dad was in the Army for 22 years. My parents were kind of a military family the entire time, like my entire childhood. And so the way they did structure very well. It came naturally to them. And that's something that a trait I have carried on in my adulthood, and something that's been good and formative for me. So, yeah. Might be a little stuffy, a little boring, but the importance of structure.
Yeah. I would say probably the value of hard work. Just kind of because I grew up on a farm, everybody kind of had to pitch in. So even when I was little, you had a job or you had to, help out. And I remember being like a teenager and not being happy with having to do some of that. But as I grew older now, and sometimes I think back, it taught me a lot about hard work and working together, to accomplish something. And so it has fond memories for me now. So I'd say that.
Mine's definitely open lines of communication. That is something that I think we did well. We didn't always know probably what to do with what was being expressed, but having a place where you could just express what you were actually thinking or feeling was something that we did do a lot of. Their secrets weren't something that was brought into anything. If you had something going on, you had to express it. And with having 4 kids, 3 other siblings, if you wanted to be heard, you had to speak up. So that was definitely something that I learned. And if I do have something to say, I'm going to probably pull you aside and say it, just because that's what you had to do in my house. That I thought is very helpful. So that's kind of where we transition into where we're going to be going today. So we're talking about parenting. So what was life like as a kid for you? I know you mentioned that you worked on a farm, so everybody had responsibility.
Yes.
But what was that like?
Like I said, I grew up on a farm, and I grew up in South Africa, so kind of in a normal, traditional, I would say strict family. And my siblings were a lot older than me, so I was the youngest of 4, and which also meant my parents were a lot older by the time they had me. So it's kind of interesting that, and I think this is why I like the birth order book, and it's just something that I read sometimes, is the whole concept that I was, the youngest, but then I also kind of grew up by myself in the house. So it was kind of like 2 worlds for me. And, but so just kind of navigating that.
So you were the baby.
I was the baby, yep. And and my siblings used to refer to me as the spoiled brat, which
I
mean,
think that's the curse of the youngest one.
Yes,
because like
which-
my sister caught that a lot.
which is what I'm like. I don't think so. Do you know our parents? I'm like, so yeah. I mean, it was good, but definitely that feeling of being like an only child almost. So, but I learned to adjust to that. So.
What was life like for you?
It was good.
And you have one older brother, right?
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of two. I have a younger brother. He's about 4.5 years younger. But yeah, it was good. Stable household. I mentioned my dad was in the military, which meant my mom had the opportunity to stay at home. And so we had mom around all the time. I mentioned we were kind of had structure and we're strict, similar to what you said, but in the best way. That was kind of formative, like we were always going to get good grades, and we were always going to be involved in a sport or an activity, that kind of thing. You weren't going to be out at 11 p.m. somewhere, nah, you got to be at home kind of thing. So stuff like that. Yeah, I think that about sums it up. Yeah.
My standard, Gen X, my mom was home whenever we were all younger. Like, my dad worked out of the house, my mom worked in the house. And so, we did the Cub Scouts, all of that stuff. But then as we got older, mom started working outside of the house. So, you were just kind of expected. You come home after school, you let yourself in, you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of what all of that kind of looked like for us. I've got one older brother. He's 4 years older than me. And then there was 2 years between the rest of us. So my brother, 4 years older than me. Then I got a younger sister that's 2 years older. And then after she was born, 2 years later, we had my youngest sister, who was the spoiled brat baby, as we all affectionately called her. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about how I grew up. Cool. So where do we go from here? Ellis got it.
I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about going into parenthood? Because, the dynamic here, these guys are parents. I'm not. So I'm going to do a lot of asking and sitting back and listening while y'all talk. How's that sound?
Okay. You want to go first?
Sure. I did not originally want to have kids. For the longest time, it just wasn't even, something that I thought about. And I don't know if that's just part of being a young adult and, being a little more selfish. But I also didn't grow up around a lot of young kids just because of that big age gap, I feel like. So I just wasn't really exposed to younger kids. So I think part of it was that. But, once I got married, obviously we had a conversation about that. And we had talked about having kids, but also felt that we wanted to wait and just, be married, just be a married couple for a while. So we waited for about 5 years before we had kids. And once I had one, I'm like, oh, I really enjoy having a child. And it was definitely challenging, and we had some fertility problems between the other two, but ended up having 3 and really enjoying.
I didn't want kids either. That was not something I ever saw myself doing. I don't think I didn't ever see myself as being somebody that would be good with that much responsibility. That, there's a ton of responsibility that goes into it. And just things that you didn't think that you would have to face, oh, I want to be a parent. Oh, that looks great. Look at all the 30-minute sitcoms. Every problem's resolved like that. Everybody's happy. Everybody's clean. No, that's not, I was that's not my experience, and I don't want to go through that. So I never saw myself in that role. And I also felt I would need to wait until I had all of my stuff together. But I think if But if that's the position that you take, you will never do it because
Correct.
you're never going to feel like, okay, I've got everything sorted out in my life. I've got everything figured out. Okay, well, now it's time for kids. Well, now you're 95. And so,
Yes.
so I got married. I was, married, and we just was like, okay, well, let's just go for it. And so then my oldest daughter was born, and she was super like chill as a baby. I was like, well, this isn't too bad. Like, this is kind of easy. Like, she doesn't cry. She doesn't fuss like a whole lot. Everything's good to go. And then, that's kind of the trap a lot of people get. And then your second one has a milk allergy and colic. And that happens. And then, but that was just kind of what I thought, like, going in. Like, I'm just never going to be ready for it. But then once you just jump in with both feet, it's way more rewarding than you really ever think possible.
Yes.
Well, okay. I said I wasn't going to talk much. I can chime in on this one, though, because it's what are you thinking going into parenthood?
Yeah.
So my wife and I have been married for a year, just recently celebrated a year, and we are in that stage of life where we're kind of thinking about parenting as this thing kind of off in the distance somewhere. Similarly to what you were saying, I always said before I ever met my wife or was married, I was like, oh, I'm going to wait. Whenever I get married, I'm going to wait forever to have kids, just so we can have as much time as possible to just be married. Then I got married, and that shortened that up a little bit. Also, being in church will shorten up that timeline for you real quick, because church people love babies, and they also love young married people who might make babies. Like, I'm just going to spell it out.
When you going to have a baby?
Yes. Every Sunday. Yeah.
Every Sunday.
Yeah. So,
welcome to church when you have a baby.
pretty much. Not that far off.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, zero, none. So we are like, we're talking about like, when is that something we might be interested in, and starting to ask the questions like, are we ready? What can we do to get ready? How can we set ourselves up for success? And
How do you define ready?
Exactly, yeah. Then we kind of bounce back and forth between like, oh yeah, we're ready, and then like, oh no, we're not ready. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean that asks I mean that leads to a pretty good question. Like, so how does one define ready?
Yeah.
Like, for me, it was just like, I mean, it. Okay, so then you need to start like looking at it. Okay, what age of life do you want to be in when your kids are in high school and active? Like, that was kind of like a deciding factor for me in that. Like, I wanted to be young enough to where like I could still go out there and on the sports fields and do all the things with them. I could get out there and play catch, play basketball, and still win, like, and still dominate, because you don't want to be. I'm a competitive guy. Like, we've talked about that. Like, if we're playing something, I want to win. And you're just looking at the, like, if my kid is 15, like, and I'm 60, I'm probably not going to win that. But if I'm in my late 30s still, or early 40s, no, I'm still going to throw down and win. Yeah. So, like, how do you, that's how I ended up defining ready.
Yeah.
Like, it was a mathematical thing.
Right.
How are you defining ready?
No, I think a lot of factors go into it. That is definitely one. Like, I find myself constantly doing the math. Like, oh, if we had a kid here, then I would be 48. Like that kind of thing.
And then they'd go to school, and then we still got time.
Right. Yeah. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Or it's like kind of what you were saying before. Are we ready to sign up for this level of responsibility? Like, every single minute of every single day having this level of responsibility. I feel like it's kind of a combination of those two things for us right now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I would say ready for us meant, having been able to be married for a couple of years. We bought our first house. We were kind of stable in our job situation. So I feel like you have that sense of security that, I'm ready to. And then, I think we just tried to plan it,
Yes.
for being such a planner. I definitely like to plan things. So I'm like, oh, well, now is the time. Let's plan this whole thing. So, which seems a little like, but I guess that would be what we had said with, we're ready.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to hear from y'all. What do you think has been the most difficult aspect of being a parent? What's been like the biggest challenge for you?
I think one of the more challenging things then this doesn't really come across whenever you're watching, like back in the day, like the TGI of sitcoms, like just how much you have to adapt to each of your children. Like I've got two girls and they are radically different. And so what was working for my oldest in like the way that we communicated, talked, did not work with the youngest, just because they're just two radically different personality types. And so learning that like each one of them is their own unique being that you need to figure out, that was something that I don't think I fully appreciated until like they both started to diverge in the way that they do things. And then the second one would probably be just because my ex and I we're not together, and like learning how to co-parent in a healthy way. And that has not, I mean, that's different for every single circumstance. But learning how to do that has been kind of a difficult thing to navigate. But I think we're getting it more right than wrong now. But that was definitely a hurdle to overcome.
For me, something that was challenging is, you know, when you envision having children, like I'll come back to like plan. You have this plan of how things will be. And when my son was probably like around middle school, he had some, you know, he was diagnosed with ADHD when he was younger, but really seemed to be struggling when he was in middle school. So we had some testing done, and he was on the spectrum. And so definitely just some challenges with navigating that your child doesn't necessarily fit in a box, like a certain box. You know, I feel sometimes there's these boxes, and so navigating that, and then still realizing, you know, I have two more children that, and nobody is the same, you know, everybody's different, but just definitely the challenges of raising somebody on the spectrum versus children that are not on the spectrum, and how you navigate parenting them differently. So I'd say that has definitely been a challenge. And then I'm also divorced, so single parenting. I agree with Michael. Navigating co-parenting can be challenging. It definitely gets easier, I would say. And for me, something that is hard is when those situations come where you will have to have a hard conversation, or, you know, something that's come up and you don't in that moment have somebody to talk to, just to bounce ideas off with. Yeah. So I felt like that had been challenging, but, you know, I learned that getting people that you trust, that you can call up and say, hey, this is going on, you know, this is what I'm thinking. So finding trusting people to have conversations with, that's definitely helped me in some of those situations.
I think that's where the it takes a village really
yes.
becomes important, and it yes. becomes like not just a cliche.
No, absolutely.
Like, I mean, there's been times since I've had to learn to start navigating that where, hey, like I've got something going on, like having like a group of people like to come alongside and help carry that.
Yes.
Has been like a key game-changing thing for that. Yes. And so I know that you've got a circle
yes.
to do that with, and that's one of the things that I've been learning how, like, to say, kind of like I talked about a moment ago, hey, I need help. Like, if you're not going to get it, you know, especially when you're competing, when there's so many people, but like being able to raise your hand and say, hey, I need a hand here. There are people that will be there to help you.
Absolutely.
And that was something that I needed to learn.
Yeah. I think a challenge that doesn't often come up in a conversation like this is from kind of the perspective of raising an adult kid. And I'm the adult kid in this situation. You know, my parents, we still have a relationship, and I'm about to turn 30. My parents are in their early 60s. We still live nearby. They live like 10 minutes from our house. And so it's been interesting kind of seeing that relationship evolve over the course of time. And I think, the things that we have kind of had to wrestle with is, first of all, the big one I'll say is I think as a kid there, or as a child, or whatever you want to call it, there are certain things that you just can't learn except until you make the mistake.
Yes.
Like, I think, and I mean, you guys can speak into this, as parents, in a perfect world, you would prevent your kid from ever making a mistake because you would teach them whatever it is they need to know before they go and make the mistake themselves. And I just think, unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. And there are certain things that, as people, we're just not going to learn until we make the mistakes on our own.
Yes.
And I think that's particularly true for me. I tend to learn a lot more from my mistakes than when I do something well. And that was something that we just had to work out between us. And the second thing is being offered love and grace and then gentle correction. I don't want this to sound any kind of way, but I think growing up, I had a lot of the correction, but not so much like the love and grace. And I had both, but not in the order that was most effective for me, And I think part of that is definitely I figured out what worked best for me as an adult, as I grew older. As a kid, it's hard for you to figure that out, let alone
express it,
verbalize it. Exactly. So I have kind of figured out as an adult, hey, this is really what I need out of this situation, and communicated that. And so that makes the whole dynamic work a lot easier. So,
well, and one thing that I've noticed just from being from parenting, especially as my children become teens, letting them learn, going to what you said, letting them learn from their mistakes. As someone that kind of grew up in the environment that I did, once mom started working out of the house and you're just kind of left to your own thing, you're just kind of okay, well, I'm on my own. And so whenever my approach to parenting initially was, well, I'm going to be at everything. So I kind of just swung the pendulum the other way. Now I'm over functioning for them. And it wasn't until someone pointed that out and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to tell them, hey, if you want to get a good grade on this test, you need to go and study for it on your own. And they didn't want to hear it. And I didn't make them this. The first time it happened, I was like, I'm not going to keep hounding you to study for your stuff. You're either going to study for it or you're not. And she went out and she got a big fat F. and so, but she had to own it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, you got an F. Your phone's gone for the weekend. And, now you learn, if you want it, I'm not going to always be there to tell you to do the thing. You're going to have to learn it on your own.
Right.
And so, that's a small scale thing. But, you want your lunch packed, you need to pack your lunch. You don't pack it, you guess what? You're not going to have everything you want. Dad's not going to do it all the time. And so, obviously when they're in first grade, you do it for
I know.
them.
I'm thinking of what, and I'm going through this now, having one that's a senior and then two at middle school. And Shannon, my youngest, she just came this is her first year in middle school. And it is those little steps
Yes.
of giving them a little more freedom. Where I think when they're younger and you're more like the protector.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel as a mom, it's hard to let go of that.
Yes.
So, little baby steps. But definitely you're in middle school now. It's okay to pack your own lunch.
Yes.
And it's okay to do this and do that and do some chores around the house. But yes, I get what you're saying.
But there's a line in there.
Yes.
And you have to figure it out and this is where it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's where we kind of get into a trap. I like to read. I kind of like to know everything I'm getting into. So once I knew that we were going to be parents and everything, I got a bunch of books and I started reading it and I was like, okay, I'm a very structured person as well. All right, this is what I expect when they're one. This is what I expect here. This is what I expect there. Okay, well, at some point, they're not going to be filling in all the things that some expert somewhere thinks that they should. And so then it was okay, well, now what? There's no backup. There's no if there's no series of if-then statements in the things. And so that's where meeting them where they are. Each one of them is their own unique being, and that's where it can get dicey. And that's where just trial and error, as scary as that sounds for someone like me to say that that's what we're going to go out and do. You have to learn to do that to some degree parenting, because what works with my oldest does not work with my youngest, and vice versa.
Yeah, I would definitely say I went through that too. Because you read that, I'm a big reader too. So you read and they point towards something, and then down the road I'm like, well, this is hard because what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another one. So I guess having the wisdom to figure out, okay, these are some things that will help with this child, but maybe I need to try it differently with this child. So
the book says when they're 18 months, they should know all of their letters and all of their shapes. Well, she's only getting 50% of her letters and 20% of her shapes. What do we do? There's no chapter on that. But this one's getting them all. I mean, it's so you can fall into that trap of
Absolutely.
thinking, if it doesn't all match up.
I'm failing as a parent.
Yes.
The book says do this, and I'm not doing it.
So, but yeah, but I loved what you said about being offered love and grace and then gentle correction.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, I didn't always get that right. I didn't always get that a lot whenever I was young. And so I wanted to try to do that then, or, as give my kids a safe space to fail and make mistakes. And I think that's one of the things that we should try to provide for them. Okay, listen, you got it wrong. Like, there's consequences to getting things wrong, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean you're this, that, and the other. So, I mean, it very much depends on how you handle your definition of gentle correction. I mean, that can be, interpreted wildly different based on whoever's offering, thing. So,
Michael and I have talked on previous episodes about how we're both self-critical people.
Yes.
And so I think, at least to a certain extent, even dating back to when I was young, I always knew, when I had messed something up. But particularly as an adult, you ain't got to tell me I messed up. I know. Okay? We can skip past that, or we can at least minimize that part. I already know.
You can just tell me what it is, and, we can talk about it.
Right, exactly.
I don't need it beat into me. But what did that look like for you growing up? Because we've talked about ours before.
Yep.
Sometimes as a young child, I would, we do things and we know we shouldn't be doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
this
sure.
is just, that little voice in there, but yet you still go ahead
Yep.
and do it. But I've had conversations with my mom before where she's like, no, what we need to talk about. I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
I'm fully aware of what we need to have. So, I don't know if that answers the
No,
question.
it does, because that's typically, my parents both had different approaches to it. My mom would be more like, you know why we're here, right? I'd be like, yes. So it wasn't like a whole, we didn't need to spend a whole lot of time there.
Yeah.
But my dad was more of, now I'm going to reiterate to you all the ways you did the thing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt a little extra to use a way to describe it in a way that my daughters would. You're being extra right now. Okay, well, that's what Dad was. So that's why you're getting it. So, but no, that didn't always feel like gentle correction. That felt like just beating it to death,
Yeah.
So you alluded to it a couple minutes ago, but there's a specific phase of parenting we've got to talk about, right? Because you got the baby phase, then they become toddlers, then they're preteens, and then they become teenagers. And I feel like that deserves a category all its own. How do you parent your kids well through the teenage years? Tell us what you know.
What wisdom? Bring us your wisdom.
My wisdom. Well, I'm still figuring it. I would say that just this week I've been thinking about some of that, and so I have my oldest is a senior, so I feel like we've made it through some of that. He's kind of I was associating it with learning to drive, which is what happened last year, and
Happening now.
the anxiety of somebody was asking me, well, why are you feeling so anxious? I'm like, well, I've been in control in the car.
Yes.
And now I'm giving this control to somebody else. And it's making me feel anxious. But kind of like the cart, we're letting them do stuff by themselves and trusting that they will make wise choices. And so and then, they go off on their way. And so the teenager years for him was a little rocky, and boys are definitely different than girls. But for me, what helped was doing lots of reading. And kind of what I alluded to before is having those people around you that when something comes up, and it will, what suggestions they have or feedback, and just kind of bouncing idea. I definitely think that's helped me with some of the ups and downs of having a teenager. So
I think for me, it really, I'm teaching mine to drive now. Like, so if you see my car out in the parking lot, like moving and then like braking really fast, like that's my oldest out there, and my beard getting more and more gray by the minute. Because that's terrifying. I get what you're like. I love that analogy of like you're kind of turning over more and more control.
yes.
One of the things that I'm doing now, because my oldest is 15 and my youngest is 13, and so I'm kind of like in getting this going, is learning, very much leaning into love others as yourself. Like, what type of parent and support what I've liked as a teen. Like, I mean, we never, as a teenager at home, you never feel like you're understood. Like, I mean, I think that just comes with it, like with being a teen and growing and learning and becoming more of an adult. So like, I just try to reflect back and say, okay, I would have liked this. Like, this might have been more helpful. But at the same time, you're dealing with someone who's a different person every day.
Yes.
And so it can be very difficult to do. But I'm just trying, there's somebody here on staff that likes to say that some people are just require extra grace. They're an extra grace required type of person. I like that phrase, and I think it very much applies to teenagers. Just try to keep your head on a swivel, because you don't know what you're going to get at any given moment. And remember that you were like that too at some point. You're going to get it wrong, so you got to give yourself extra grace too. Yeah. Really just try to roll with the punches as best you can.
Yes. We kind of like have a saying, one day at a time at our house, some days are better than others, but yes.
But I love what you said about make good choices. Like, I think that's kind of been something I know that I've told my oldest one a lot here.
Yeah.
Make good choices. Like, hey, have a great day. Make good choices.
Yes.
Like, that's kind of become like a little.
Yes.
Every day when they get out of the car to go to school. Like, I stole that from Karen. She's awesome. She's on our staff here, but I stole that directly from her. I heard her say it once to her daughter, and I was like, I love that.
Yes.
Like, just beat that into their head. To
a little encouragement for the day.
Yes. So there we go.
So I have a little bit of perspective I can offer here, because I lead the student ministry here at our church. And so I even though I don't parent them myself, I spend a lot of time with teenagers. And there are a few things that we kind of try to live by in student ministry world. The first one is one I tell my team all the time, is that we're playing a long game here.
Yes.
We're not going to be able to teach them everything they need to know and download it in their brains when they're 13. We're playing the long game. What can we teach them? How much can we download into their brains between 13 and 18, which is when they usually graduate and then they move on.
Yeah.
And so we say all the time, like it's language on our team. We're going to hope that they absorb 1% of everything we say tonight on any given event or any given lesson we're giving.
Yeah.
We're going to give them the whole 100%. But they might only absorb 1% of it tonight. But if they absorb the 1% every time they're here, then over the arc of time, it'll build up to something. So that's one. Another one is anytime I sit in front of a group of parents and kind of give them the pitch, what is student ministry, what do we do, things like that, or have a meeting, I say this is a partnership. Because I think not in a in a malicious way or not in a way they express, but I think there are sometimes where parents expect us as student ministry people to be like their right hand or partner with them. And what I tell them is, yes, this is a partnership, but we get them for 2 hours once a week. Like we can only do so much. And like if you, particularly when it comes to the stuff we're teaching them in student ministry, if you want this stuff to stick and become something they build their life on, like we can tell them when we have them, but it's got to be reinforced at home if it's gonna stick. Yeah, those are like the two main things. And then the third thing is just when a student is having a crisis of some kind, parents often come into that meeting with the kind of unexpressed mentality like, oh, this is the first time any kid has ever gone through this, ever. And sometimes I have to sit across from them and tell them, like, look, this is not the first time a teenager has ever experienced this. Like, I personally have seen that. I've seen this movie before. You know what I mean? Yeah. And part of this is just being a teenager, and we just gotta do the best we can and walk through it and keep doing the things we know are gonna help them, and keep walking forward one day at a time. So,
and I think that's, that's really what most parenting is. Like, you give them everything that you got, and then only 1% is going to stick. But you hope over the course of time, like you said, that it all builds up into something, and that you're planting something deep in their subconscious. Like, if you just keep saying make good choices, eventually, it's going to rattle around in there somewhere and then come up whenever they need to. Like, they're faced with something, make good choices. Okay, well, I'll try to do that. Like, that's really all it is. You just try to put as much stuff in there so that way whenever it's needed, it pops up.
Yeah. We have students 6th through 12th grade here, and we have volunteers that serve at every level of that span. And it's funny because when they come in with 6th graders, they're like, yes, like I'm hype about this. I'm going to change this student's life tonight. Like, and they walk out and they're like, what the heck just happened? And you can kind of see, like, I take no pleasure in this.
Just reality smack them right in the face.
Yes, exactly. You can kind of see the hope, like, drain. But you go to that same volunteer when those kids are in 9th grade or 10th or 11th or 12th, and it looks a lot different. It looks like,
because their relationship has grown.
Yes, all this stuff I put up with when they were 6th graders is paying off now. Yes. And so if you play the long game, eventually you will see the reward. Yes. So,
well, let's shift gears and let's look at some parents in the Bible.
Yes. And
Ellis is going to take us away with Samuel and Eli.
Yes. So this story comes out of the book of 1 Samuel, and it's there's some interesting things we can take away from parenting in this story. So the story starts with a guy named Elkanah. He has 2 wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Hannah is barren. She's unable to have children, but she prays to God to be able to have a child. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 22, she says, after the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. Basically, if I can have a kid, I will pledge him to God's service for the rest of his life, basically. So she's able to have that kid, Samuel, and kind of puts him into the service of Eli, who's a priest. Eli has 2 sons of his own, Hophni and Phinehas, and these guys are...
They're something
interesting. So I won't recount it in detail, but in 1 Samuel chapter 2, the Bible goes into some detail about, like, hey, here's a ritual that priests and their kids have to follow. And to really, like, shorten it up, Hophni and Phinehas don't. They not only don't follow directions, they, like, do the complete opposite of what they're supposed to do. And so...
they're shakedown artists.
Yeah. Yes. They turn the ritual into something that can benefit them and that they can gain something from. And so Eli is forced to kind of discipline them and say, "Hey, y'all, this is not what you're supposed to do." And so I think eventually Samuel kind of becomes like an adopted son, a spiritual son for Eli. And Hophni and Phinehas, it doesn't work out so well for them. And so I think there are a lot of things in that brief summary of that story that I've heard you guys say over the course of this conversation already. I think the easy thing is to apply the same set of expectations and the same lens to Samuel, Hophni, and Phinehas. And the reality was that all three of them were different. Samuel in particular was different. And so what he needed was different than what Hophni and Phinehas needed.
Yes.
And applying the same method to all three didn't work out well for all three.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in Genesis 27, that's where we get to look at Isaac,
Yep.
who big dog patriarch, number 2, like right after Abraham. And so he has Esau and Jacob. And if you've never read it, it's one of the funnier stories. And I just imagine, like, if it was a play, like, Isaac putting on like a goat pelt, like, and going up and being felt and like that actually fooling Isaac into thinking that was actually Esau. It's silly, like, whenever you read it. But this was a guy who had these boys when he was 60. So, I mean, he decided, I don't know, like, it's not a move I would have made. Like, I didn't. I went much younger because I wanted to go out there and beat them on in sports and things. But they had clear favorites. Like, Rebecca favored Jacob, Isaac favored, Rebecca favored Jacob, and Isaac favored Esau. Everybody knew who had a favorite, and like, it just wasn't a secret, and that just led to a whole lot of rivalry. And so, and I think whenever you are like the spoiled brat child baby, of the family, like, it's very easy for people or for your siblings to think that, like, I felt like, my brother was my mom and dad's favorite there for a while. Then I thought it was them. I was in the middle. And so, like, your perception, it just doesn't make sense then. And so, but here, like, it was clear. And they each kind of favored and jockeyed for the other one to get the blessing and all the things. And so, sometimes what we learn, what I take away from a lot of the Old Testament stories is just negative examples. Like, I don't want to do that. So then you need to figure out, okay, well, how do I not show favoritism between the two that I have? And so that just means being a lot more intentional of spending individual time with each one. So that way they, and they're still going to feel that way because they're teenagers, they're kids. They're going to be like, well, they got something that I didn't. But, I mean, you could have had that if you wanted it. You just have to ask for it. Like, that's like the prodigal son when we talked about that story before. Like, the father said, hey, all that was there. If you wanted it, all you had to do was ask.
Yep.
So, I mean, giving them the space to be able to do that, but just making sure that each child feels loved and cared for by each parent can go a long way. And I think that's the main takeaway when you're looking at it from a parental perspective there.
Okay.
And which one do you got?
I'm going to talk about Ruth and Naomi. So, Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, and her children, they relocate from Bethlehem to Moab because of a famine. And then while they're there, Naomi's husband dies, and she's left with her 2 sons, and they both marry women from Moab.
Scandal.
Not Moab. Oh, gosh.
They marry the foreigners.
Oh, my stars.
But then both of her sons end up dying. And so she makes this really wise decision to go back home. So I'm going to read from Ruth 1, verses 8 to 10. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. "No," they said, "we want to go with you to your people." Then the one daughter-in-law leaves and returns to her family. And then there's some more reading, and then I'm from in verse 16. But Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back." So Ruth is one of the other daughter-in-laws. "Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." And so why I think this resonates with me is just that kindness that she must have shown these two women, that they did not want to leave her because so their family is there because Naomi is technically the foreigner in this country, so it kind of makes sense that she will go back, but that they would stay behind with their families. But the whole thought that they now thought she was their family. And so that's always kind of stuck with me. And what I would say is that parents aren't just born to you. I think that there's also those you inherit kind of like through, if you get married, like a mother-in-law, or if parents get divorced and you have a step-parent, or when parents adopt kids. So I think motherhood and fatherhood just has different faces, and sometimes
you just end up becoming that for a community of people. Like I think about like my Grammy. Like she wasn't just my Grammy. Like she was the town's Grammy. Like a little village out in southern Illinois of like 350 people. But you want to know like who they all called Grammy? Like my Grammy. Yeah. Like she was there for literally everything. Like they just kind of become that, and it's because they just reflect joy and goodness and care and love and support and encouragement and all of those things. Yeah. Like just a very nurturing nature, and it very much sounds like that's what she embodied here.
Yeah. So that's kind of what the thought that Naomi understood and treated her daughter-in-laws like they were her daughter. And so as a parent, Naomi kind of she was humble and courageous, and she had a kind heart. So I think, as a parent, that's something that is very encouraging. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit, and we'll pick back up right after this clip.
Some of you blame yourselves because you feel like you were a bad parent. You didn't spend enough time with them when they were younger. Maybe you were too hard on them. Maybe you weren't hard enough. You beat yourself up for not setting a great example or doing enough to get good influences in their lives. Others of you know that you've done your best so far. Nobody's perfect, but you feel like you did everything you could to help guide them. You were intentional about your time together. You led by example. You got them around other amazing, positive people, and you can't understand why. They've grown up and done what they've done. Wherever you are, and even if there is some truth in your perceived shortcomings as a parent, letting yourself be dragged down by the weight of your guilt and shame will hinder you from being the great parent you are still called to be.
We touched on that a little bit earlier, but Elijah's point definitely needs to be reiterated there, like letting go of the guilt. Like you're a human, you're on earth, you're going to make mistakes. Do the mistakes that we make while parenting have consequences? Yes, like we see that in some of the examples that we looked at in the Bible, but there's an overarching theme in there, though, that God is bigger than our mistakes. He loves our kids more than we ever will. And so, like, that is something that we can take comfort in that. Should we own our mistakes when we make them? Absolutely. But should we carry them around and just punish ourselves forever because of them? No, I don't think that's the answer either. That's kind of my take whenever I hear that. But what do you guys take away?
Seems like an imperfect science to me, because there not only are our theories and methods imperfect, but we are dealing with like uncontrollable variables. And so given all of that, we can't expect to be perfect, and just have to be okay with that. And for self-critical people like all three of us, that it's really hard, but it's kind of a reality of it.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I totally, had some fair share of my parenting guilt. Sometimes when I question, something I've done or said, or, I keep trying to remember that, God placed this child in my life, and if he had the faith that I could, help parent them, that I should lean on that. You
Yes.
know, it's a partnership with, I mean, you know, God entrusted children to us, but we're doing this together. And where I might fail, you know, God will come through in the end. So, and sometimes something else I do is, like, I'll tell the kids, it's okay to say you're sorry, you know, or, you know, that you've made a mistake, because, you know, we're repenting that sometimes we're people too and we make mistakes. So I think it's good to let our kids know that we're human too and we make mistakes, and ask for forgiveness. So.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap a bow on this, I have a few questions for y'all about from the perspective of someone who's looking at parenting on the horizon. I'd love to hear from y'all. And we've gotten into some of these already, but just to get really pointed with it. So the first one is, what's one thing you know about parenting now that you wish you had known at the beginning?
I wish I wouldn't have gone into it just so absolutely terrified. Like, I really was. Like, I remember when my oldest was born and I'm sitting there and I'm holding her. Like, in just this, it was just two distinct emotions, like, competing for the same space. It was, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful creature I've ever seen in my whole entire life. I cannot believe, it was just an amazing thing. Like, just looking there and holding, my daughter was like almost 2 feet long, so she was an abnormally long child, but like this giant baby. And then just like this dread and fear, like, I am responsible for making sure that she is a functioning, well-rounded member of society.
Wow.
Like, it was like
That's a
no
lot of pressure.
Yes. And is that true? Yes, but it's not all on me. You know, it's my job to, you know, help give her a foundation, but ultimately, like, she's going to make her own choices and decisions in life, and I can't own all of them. And I think whenever we first go into parenting, like, we think everything that is are they a reflection on the job that we did? Yes, to some degree, but ultimately, like, they make their own decisions. And so that was something I wish I would have known at the beginning, and I probably wouldn't have overfunctioned and overcompensated for a whole lot of things, where I could have just let her start learning earlier.
Yeah. I'd say, as a planner, you know, thinking that you can plan how things are going to go, because it does not work like that. And yet you try.
You try.
And I feel like, you know, maybe some of the things we read in books and we're like, that we think is important, but now when you think about it, you know, maybe some of these things weren't that important. So I definitely say some of that. That.
Very cool.
So when Madeline wasn't getting, like, the trapezoid shape right all the time, whenever she was, like, you know, 18 months, I could have let myself off the hook a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Or when you think, oh my gosh, my child's never going to walk because this is the milestone for walking.
Yes.
And then like 6 months later, you're like, oh, I wish that they're not running all over the place, because now I can't keep up. So, yeah.
No, when I would stand Madeline up and say, walk, and she would sit, why? It says right here, box 3. Yes.
Box 3. Awesome. So we talked about the most challenging thing about being a parent. What's the most rewarding part of being a parent?
I think whenever you watch them do, like, genuinely kind things, like with zero prompting on your behalf. Like, I think that's probably one of the most rewarding things, because it makes me feel like I got something right, like I imparted something into them, or, you know, that they've just picked up from doing, you know, regular things with me, or where I've taken them in church or whatever. Just whenever I see one of them do, like, a random act of kindness, like with zero prompt, like, I think that's an incredibly rewarding experience.
Yeah. I guess did you try and, kind of what Michael's saying too, you're trying to instill values and, you know, try and teach them to make wise choices. But sometimes you feel like you're just talking into space, you
Yes.
know. And then here and there, randomly, you'll see a little glimpse of it coming through, and it's like, oh, look, they did.
They're doing it.
Yeah, they're grasping. You know, I definitely feel like that's rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. What's one piece of advice you would give to people who are thinking about or about to become parents?
Wow, I feel like I've.
What's one piece of advice?
Yeah.
Like if I had to delineate it down to one, probably just like keep your head on a swivel, relax, roll with it, like, and enjoy the baby time a lot more. Like, yes, it can be tiring. You know, you're not sleeping very much, depending upon if your kid has a milk allergy and colic. You know, like all of those things. But just savor that, because it really, and this was also something that I thought was just a cliche, but it's really not. Like, that time goes by so fast, and it can be drowned out. Like, all of those precious memories and thoughts and feelings and aspirations and hopes and dreams and all those things can be drowned out by the time they get to middle school. So take lots of pictures, back them up on all the devices and all the things, and enjoy it and savor it and go back to it on a regular basis.
Yeah. I agree with Michael. That saying where they say the days are long, but the year, is it that? Is it, and the years are short, or is it the other way around?
It's somewhere in there. Sarah Quick will put it on the screen.
Okay. In any case, thank you, Sarah, for rescuing me there at the moment. I couldn't. But when they're little, I feel like you're spending so much time trying to guide them and protect them, keep them safe, and then they become older, and you know, we want to send them off, but just, you know, it seems like it's speeding fast now for me. Like, just kind of because I'm now on the flip side of that. You know, they're teenagers and one is graduating. That it's just speeding up. Like, now it seems like my time has run out to make an impact. But I agree, enjoying it in the moment. Because sometimes it feels like the days are just blurring together. But
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. So one more. My wife and I are in the kind of the spot where, like, the people we do life with, like, are in small group with and things like that. I think it's us and one other couple who are left who don't have a kid or have one on the way, and so we're like, who's gonna blink first, kind of thing. But for people who don't have kids but are doing life with people who do, what can those people do to help support and surround the people who are raising kids? Whether it's a church community like the one I just described, or whatever community, you know, people watching might be a part of. What can that community do to surround and support people who are raising kids?
Well, I think if it's like a younger couple like you guys, I feel like maybe teenagers, because that's the phase I'm kind of in. They see more the relationship they can have with you as a younger adult versus. So I would say speaking wisdom into them, because sometimes it's cooler to hang out with the young adult than my parent, and just, you know, getting good feedback from, you know, just being there as a support. I think that, I mean, I know my daughter loves your wife, so much so that she colored an entire picture for her, you know, just, and that's because, you know, Abby's showing that interest in her and have conversations with her and ask her. So I think that, you know, I don't know what Michael thinks.
No,
but
I think that's really good. I think being willing to be like a cool aunt, uncle like type role
Yeah.
is awesome and something that you could do. And then also being willing, especially since, I know a lot of the people in your circle that you're talking about, being willing to just say, hey, we'll take them for the evening and you guys go out and do your thing.
Yeah.
Like that would be something that would fill two things at the same time. Like one, it would give you guys an opportunity to practice and like hanging out with little ones and doing all the things. So that way you're not learning in the hospital, and stuff like that. And then the other one would be just to give them a chance to have a break. Like that can be tiring. That can be long. So I think that would serve two purposes right there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for y'all's wisdom and knowledge on this topic.
All right. If you had one resource to share, one resource to share with the people watching, what would it be?
I guess the Boundaries book.
Dr. Cloud.
Dr. Cloud. I like what he says in there. So definitely.
All right.
I think that's a good one.
We'll go with Boundaries. What about you? Like, as someone that deals with student age kids, like grade 6 through 12 on the reg.
Oh man, there's a book called. Oh no, I'm losing the title now. I'll have Sarah Quick put it on the screen. It's something like I can picture the cover in my brain, just don't have the words. It's something to the effect of like the 3 big signs of like big transformational changes in your child. I'll put it on the screen.
It's on there. It's on there.
It'll be in the description. Yeah.
I'd go the classic what to expect when you're expecting. Like, I mean, yes. Can you go overboard and start living by the check boxes? Yes. But don't learn from both my mistake and Daleen's. Don't judge yourself by those boxes. But it does serve a very good purpose of giving you an idea of what to expect.
Since you don't know what you're expecting.
Since you don't have any idea.
Yes.
The other one, everybody poops. Like classic child potty training book. Invaluable resource whenever you get to that age.
Yeah.
I'm
true. Trying to block that.
I'll add one more resource since I flubbed mine and still can't remember the name of it. This right here. People who have been there before, who are around you. Go ask them. Have a conversation with them just like this one. I think that could be really valuable too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Daleen, for coming in here and being with us today. And
it was fun.
And like always, if you leave us a review, we'll send you one of the After Chat mugs. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode of the After Chat.
Thanks for joining us for the After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.